someone who needs Romanian interpretation, but there was no one. So welcome everybody to the book launch of the Handbook of Tactics, the Handbook of Resistant Tactics Against Evictions. You can have the English PDF by scanning the QR code that's on the table or near the small table, and there's another paper here. I can pass it for, the public. At the moment, it's on Căși, sociale, ACUM's website, but then it will be also on EAC website after this. And you can have the Romanian print that's on the table and on the other table there. But this is in Romanian, the print version. Yes, so first I would like to say a few words about the book and the context that it came from, and then, but just very shortly, and then we will have a discussion between groups who were among authors of this book. So tonight we have here someone from Social Housing Now from Cluj, someone from the Common Front for Housing Rights from Bucharest, from RomaJust, Roma Lawyers Association from Romania, the Roof from Serbia, Anti-Eviction Berlin, Habita from Portugal, and the Tenant Union from Barcelona. And each of the speakers can introduce themselves more concretely. The book is a result of a workshop series that we organized for local people in Cluj last year. We had 11 workshops, each facilitated by someone else. And we invited other Romanian housing and anti-racist groups that work against evictions and in the radical housing justice movement, and also some other groups from the European Action Coalition for the Right to Housing and to the City. First of all, some from the region, like the Roof from Serbia, but we also had the cities for all from Budapest who couldn't come today. And then we also invited some other groups from further away, but that can have some common tactics with us. Like I'm talking, I think the Portugal movement has many similarities, for example, so that's a very interesting case how to discuss that, even though the context is not similar. The goal of the workshop series was to learn to empower the local activists to learn more about how to resist evictions, but also to skill share among these groups that are already connected, but we have quite few opportunities to really gather together and discuss these subjects. Beyond that is to have this book as a sort of toolbox in which we gather different tactics, quite practical oriented. So in order for anyone who picks this up can have some knowledge and some insights about how to organize against evictions, but in very different contexts. And the texts are quite different. Some are more like a historical view of how the anti-eviction movement formed. Some are more really practical oriented and listing very concrete tactics that worked in a certain context. And I don't think I have anything else to say for the beginning. So I thought about the structure of the order of the discussion today. I would give first the word for Social Housing Now, and then to the other local groups, and then to the other speakers regionally and then further away. And then we can have a common discussion together. Yes. So, George, if you would like to start.
Hi everyone, thank you for joining us and the discussion on this very important topic, I think, for the coalition as a whole. I'm going to talk a little bit about how we deal with evictions here in Cluj, and also a couple of info regarding the national situation, info which might help us understand and prepare better for any future eviction risks. I'm going to start by going a little bit back to the socialist housing policy, which was basically good. I know this is kind of controversial in a way. There's a lot of very good elements, but there are obviously some holes. We recently did some archival work and discovered that in the 80s there's much higher number of evictions due to rent areas in Cluj and another city, Baia Mare, than we initially expected. So we're not talking about evictions provoked by expropriation in order to build new neighborhoods, but something much more similar to what is today. However, there's a very important, significant distinction. Evictions during socialism were basically rehousing processes, not dehousing, as it happened after the regime change. So what happened afterwards was an explosion of evictions. In the 90s and 2000s and later on, many of them informal, some of them formal, some of them registered, and some not recorded. Some of the eviction decisions that were taken in the 1980s were actually implemented in the 90s and so on. So it's a very important mix. But more than that, what happened in the 90s, I mean, everyone knows, I'm not going to go into that, the whole social catastrophe that took place. Evictions were just some facet of what was happening. Mass layovers, the dismantlement of industry and so on. So evictions didn't necessarily stood out as the main social phenomenon that was taking place at the time. And we think that for this reason, they were kind of a hidden social phenomenon in a way. So, coming back to the present and trying to answer some of the questions that Nora posed for us. So major eviction risks. Now we still see a lot of eviction risks, particularly in the Patarât area, which is an informal area next to the city landfill. And many people who were evicted from the city were evicted there, and now they're facing a new risk of eviction because of the process that we discussed last night, urban regeneration and the new investment plans. And so we also have other areas in the city, like Stefansson or Meșteru Manole, which are areas where some are mostly inhabited by the Roma. Some of the last Roma families living in state-owned housing or social housing. And there's also nationally, there's the huge problem of tenants in private housing. They lack any kind of serious protection, legal protection. And this is such a huge topic, I'm not going to go into it. It would deserve a different discussion. And there's also the restitution process, property restitution process, which is technically still ongoing, and we still don't know how many evictees are going to come out of when this is finalized. And changes in Cluj regarding what we noticed in the last years. We hope that some of our previous actions maybe had an impact on the attitude of the municipality when dealing with potential evictions. Now we don't hear so much about new evictions being planned by the public authorities. But obviously keep in mind that we're talking about a very small public housing stock. And also, most of the people living informally in the central areas have already been evicted, so there's not much to evict anymore. With regards to transnational trends, I think it's very difficult to place the situation here in some larger trends because we don't have the private big landlords that we hear about in Western countries. And there are very few debtors defaulting on their credit. But dismantlement of public housing still continues. And with regards to useful tactics, so our most useful avenue was taking legal action. We didn't initially think about it, but it turned out to be the most effective manner. So there are very few legal protections, but still we managed to find some space for action. One of the reasons being that public authorities are not always doing their due diligence, so they leave some space for procedural aspects to be countered in courts. I was thinking about saying that or not, but it is what it is. So a couple of examples where we managed to actually block the eviction. We noticed, I think one of the biggest most of the effort has to be done in studying the papers, the documents, legal aspects and stuff like that. I think that when we do that and when we exhaust all the legal aspects of the situation, we can obviously think about some of the direct actions that we have to do, but direct actions are usually very exhaustive and also dangerous, risky for all parties involved. So we discovered in one case an erroneous summon, and we investigated the cadastre document and stuff like that, and we went to the bailiff and pointed out, look, you actually summoned the wrong person, and he accepted the situation. There's another case where state-owned housing fell in disrepair. People complained for many years, and after 7 years, the municipal inspector came and saw that, wow, this is not fit for inhabiting to be inhabited anymore, so they decided to allocate just a very small studio, 10 square meters, and we mediated the situation, and they ended up actually being allocated a normal apartment. And in another case, we also hired a lawyer because one family was sued by the municipality, and basically the municipality was trying to break the law protecting people with disabilities because there was a child with a disability. They stopped paying the rent for a couple of years, but they already had the papers proving the disability, and in order to obtain the papers, one representative of the municipality was supposed to sign there, so they obviously knew that institutionally, but they didn't care. Because under the pacta sunt servanta, that was the Latin phrase that they were quoting over and over, because they signed the contract and they were supposed to pay, regardless of what was happening with the respective child. So thankfully, the lawyer did a great job, and the municipality attacked the decision 3 times in 3 different courts, but thankfully in the end, they won. So these are the good examples. I won't go into Rule 39 of the European Court of Human Rights, but maybe at one point we could discuss that as well. We used it a little bit. And what we need from the transnational movement, well, first of all, I think symbolic support, as in petitions, signatures, mail bombings. It still works, because there are some kind of European civilizational sensibilities to some of the public authorities in Romania. And we also need more events like this, where we can exchange some of the experience we have with regards to blocking evictions.
Thank you very much, George. I just need shortly to apologize to everyone because I forgot to say my questions to you. I only said it to the speakers. So now you heard the first answer to 3 questions I put to them, but you didn't know. I'm really sorry. I'm a bit stressed. So my goal was to direct the discussion a bit away from the book in which you find some information, but to talk about a bit more of the context maybe, and to discuss here what are the major difficulties or problems these movements face across, with eviction cases right now, if there are any similarities to the past or something new has happened in the last few years. And then also to give maybe some examples of concrete tactics that has been proved very useful, and also as a third question to reflect on the transnational context and to reflect on what a coalition like the European Action Coalition or transnational collaboration between groups that fight against evictions can bring to a local group, and how could we better collaborate or collaborate more. So these were the questions. I'm very sorry again. Yeah, and next I would like to give the word to Eugen from RomaJust, who is going to speak in Romanian, and then we will have interpretation after he says something in Romanian in English. Yes, I give this to you.
Bună seara și din partea mea. Mă bucur că sunt la o astfel de reuniune, mai ales că suntem la nivel european.
Good evening. On my part, I'm glad to be here.
Eu sunt președintele Asociației RomaJust. Suntem o asociație de juriști și o rețea de avocați.
I'm the president of RomaJust. It's an association of Roma people and lawyers. Right?
Sunt și monitor de drepturile omului din partea European Roma Rights Center.
Again, could you repeat it?
Human rights. I'm monitor of human rights from ERC. Maybe you know European Roma Rights Center.
Yeah.
Okay. Noi ca și organizație, dacă vorbim de drepturile omului și raportat la locuire,
we as an organization, if we're speaking of human rights and the rights to housing,
așa cum spunea și George, noi am încercat de multe ori, am reușit, de multe ori nu am reușit.
As George said earlier, we tried some things before, but we weren't fully successful.
Să ducem toate cazurile întâlnite de evacuare forțată sau demolare efectivă de cartiere în judecată, la curte.
We tried to tackle cases of demolition and forced evictions, taking these cases to court.
În unele cazuri, așa cum am spus la început, am reușit să aducem justiție în comunitate.
Just as I mentioned, in some cases we achieved some results.
Dar în unele cazuri nu am reușit și lumea, beneficiarii noștri, să le spun așa, au rămas pe drumuri, chiar unii dintre ei au plecat în străinătate să găsească o viață mai bună.
Some of these people whose cases were not solved, I hope I understand it correctly, they left the country in order to find a better way of life.
Avem la nivel național astăzi o lege cu care lucrăm foarte mult, asta privind legalizarea terenurilor și a imobilelor.
We're focusing right now on a law which is could you elaborate more on this one?
Legalize.
Okay. Okay.
Aceasta se numește
Okay, so you understand.
legea așezărilor informale.
So the legalization of informal settlements.
Și autoritățile locale sau județene, pe de o parte respectă această lege, pe de o parte nu o respectă.
The local authorities are not really keen in respecting this law.
Și noi monitorizăm tocmai implementarea ei.
And we are monitorizing the implementation of it.
Pentru a ajuta, noi spunem, pentru că noi avem ca și organizație focus pe comunitatea romă.
And we as an organization that focuses on Roma people's issues.
Că peste 65% din populația de etnie romă din România nu au acte de proprietate pe locuințele unde locuiesc.
And we emphasize the fact that more than 65% of Roma people don't have their papers regarding housing in order. They have the
legal documents
Legal form.
on
their own housing.
yeah. Thanks. You're hearing what I'm saying, or
A little bit more.
okay? I'll try to speak more louder then. Okay.
Ok. Tocmai din cauza asta e foarte importantă pentru noi, legea aceasta e importantă pentru noi.
So, from this point of view, this law is very important to us.
Iar despre cazurile despre care am vorbit și în carte și le-am adus în atenția justiției române,
we talked about this in the booklet. Some cases that we tackled on a legal ground.
și avem cazul Focșani.
We have the case from Focșani, it's a Romanian city.
Unde astăzi avem o nouă metodă de evacuare forțată,
Where today we have a new method of forced eviction.
Asta venind tocmai de la Ministerul Dezvoltării împreună cu primăria.
So the belligerents are the local authorities and the national authorities. What minister? The Ministry of Urban Development.
Cum se întâmplă asta? Deci primăria a aplicat pentru fonduri pentru a reabilita locuințele sociale.
So the way the story goes, the local authorities applied for European funds in order to rehabilitate these houses, these social houses.
Ministerul le-a aprobat proiectul și i-a finanțat.
So it wasn't European funds. It was funds from the ministry. Okay. So the ministry approved the funds, right? And transferred it. Yeah.
Și primăria acum a intentat peste 65 de procese tuturor familiilor din locuințele sociale.
So the local authorities started suing 65 families.
Și ei justifică evacuarea tocmai prin finanțarea care au primit-o pentru reabilitare.
So they are somehow justifying the forced evictions through these funds that they applied to.
Și acum RomaJust avem 5 avocați implicați în aceste procese.
And now RomaJust is trying to solve these cases with 5 lawyers.
Și avem 5 avocați pentru că sunt foarte multe procese pe rol. Pe rolul instanței avem 5 avocați, sunt foarte multe procese, de asta am implicat 5 oameni.
Okay, 5 lawyers are working on the cases because the cases are evidently a lot. So.
Și așa cum se întâmplă în România foarte des, sunt judecători de la aceeași curte care ne-au dat nouă câștig de cauză.
So as it happens in Romania very often, there are judges from the same institution that have a ruling favorable to the association.
Și alți judecători care au sprijinit primăria să evacueze familiile.
And of course, others weren't so keen in supporting the association's goals. So yeah, they were on the side of the local authorities.
Acum noi o să mergem în continuare cu procesele. Sperăm ca la Curtea de Apel să avem câștig de cauză și să păstrăm familiile în locuințele lor.
Okay, so they're taking the case to a higher level of the justice system.
Deci este o metodă nouă în care statul conlucrează pentru evacuările forțate și asta putem să o acuzăm pe de o parte Ministerul Dezvoltării, dar pe de altă parte și Uniunea Europeană care aduc aceste fonduri.
Okay, so this seems to be a new method that needs to be tackled. So the main so-called belligerents could be the main lines of attack in order are the local authorities and even the European Union institutions. So yeah.
Mai avem, o să vă mai spun câteva cuvinte, că eu cred că m-am lungit prea mult, despre cazul Eforie.
What case?
Eforie.
Okay, so there's this other case, Eforie.
Avem 85 de persoane victime ale demolării din 2012.
So we have 85 victims of a case where there's an ongoing demolition.
Dintre ei, doar pentru 6 am reușit să facem dreptate.
So far we managed from these 85 persons to help only 6.
Și am putut să forțăm primăria să plătească despăgubiri de 25.000 de euro pentru fiecare persoană.
And we achieved, and we managed to force the local authorities to pay 25,000 euros in reparations, for each person, right?
Dar primăria are alte metode de a le opri banii.
So, but the local authorities have other tools to stop the money getting to these people.
Trimite poliția locală. Poliția locală. Primarul trimite poliția locală în comunitate.
Dar ce trimite acolo?
Poliția locală, știi, poliția comunitară.
Am înțeles, da. Atunci, da, the local police is always a useful force that the local authorities use against these
Dau
people.
amenzi abuzive.
They give out abusive fines.
Și astfel poate să oprească din banii care trebuie să le dea lor, din cei 25.000 de euro, le oprește banii pentru amenzi.
So the local authorities are stopping
They take out the fines from the reparations they should give.
Yeah.
Cea mai mare sumă care o avem acolo pentru o persoană este undeva în amenzi, vorbesc de amenzi, de undeva la 12.000 de euro.
So the money they kind of laundered, it's about 12,000 euros. The fines, through the fines, right?
V-am spus că sunt 85 de persoane victimele demolării.
Could you repeat that, please?
Deci am spus că sunt 85 de oameni victimele demolării.
Okay, so there are 85 victims of this demolition project.
Și deci restul de 79 dintre ei suntem încă în judecată, suntem încă în proces.
And from this number, 75 of them.
79, because there's six
Yes.
lawsuits that were successful,
And the rest is still, they have still ongoing processes.
Mai avem și alte cazuri unde suntem implicați. Am venit și aici la Cluj.
Okay, could
Alte cazuri. We are implicated also in other cases like Cluj or Miercurea Ciuc or
these are Romanian towns, right?
Bacău or others. So it's not time to explain in detail what we do, but maybe next time when you have a workshop for 3 or 4 hours to have that experience from you and from our organization, then maybe it's better for me because my English is not so good at that. I choose to speak in Romanian. Sorry, Baba, that maybe was boring, but the information also I want to hear many things from you. For that, maybe in the next time of that kind of meetings, the workshops, to work in methods. Maybe it's better for all of us.
Also speak Greek.
I speak Greek also because I was in Greece 10 years working there like economical refugees. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Eugen, and thank you for the translation. Yes, so I think just to add in brackets a reference to the discussion from yesterday when we discussed urban regeneration and gentrification and how it's used to evict people. This was a concrete case from Romania when exactly this discourse is used to evict Roma families, and we have to really think about that these Roma families are the families that are usually left out of any system of help, you know. So the importance of Roma Lawyers Association is very huge in Romania, where the systemic racism is beyond imagination. So thank you, Eugen, for. And now I would give the word to Veda from FCDL.
Yeah, thank you. I just have a question for Eugen, just a clarification question. So with the Focșani story, so the city hall got the funds for rehabilitation from the ministry, these EU funds, and so then they are kicking people out, they're evicting people because they're saying you need to leave because we need to rehabilitate and we can't rehabilitate with you in it?
Yes.
Oh my God.
Yeah, yes, that is the action they do, and it's unilateral resiliation of the contract. They are not going to the court to ask the permission, just they say, okay, we have European funds. That is important for the mayor. How to lose the money with you in. So we have to put you out to rehabilitate the houses, and when it's new, you come back. But we asking them to not resiliate the contract, just to suspend it. Yes. Was a solution to suspend it. In our negotiation, they says it's not possible to suspend it because we want to have new criteria to access it to the social houses. That it's yeah.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Great. So, yeah. I am Veda. I'm based in Bucharest with the Common Front for Housing Rights, and I'm gonna add just a few more like info in continuation with what my comrades George and Eugen have already kind of like described the local context. I would add that the local housing justice movement we've been organizing. I guess more than 12 years or so, if we count it as as an actual beginning, the organization in Cluj. But then if we look into all of the organizing and political work that has been done by the Roma rights movement in the 90s and 2000s against evictions, like the whole history of the movement is much more complex. So what we do in the movement builds upon all of that kind of history, and I think this is a good thing to mention. From this point of view, like thinking in terms of moments in time, I feel like now we are in a very important new stage politically because of the war in Ukraine. And the consequences on our societies are just so complex and so deep and so profound, and have uprooted so many aspects of our daily lives that it's even hard to kind of comprehend. But and this is kind of a conversation in itself, actually. But one thing that is very much linked to this, the topic of this book, and fighting evictions and tactics, is that with the war in Ukraine, we are witnessing, as we all do know this very well, an increase in militarization and an increase in civic repression. So repression against just civic society, right? In our societies, and it's visible, and it's on a legal dimension, but also in terms of just the actual practices of the police forces. And this is something that at Fece de Leu we kind of noticed, and it might be something new. And it's a question also for you if you perceive this as well. Well, in December last year there was an eviction, a big eviction in Bucharest, and it was the first one that we've seen in which basically the people were evicted brutally by the police without any kind of actual papers. So the police just came and kicked the people out. They didn't have any kind of some sort of justification, some sort of crappy, motive that, it's still, of course, totally unacceptable and immoral and not okay, of course. But they didn't even have that. They didn't even have the legal cover to do it. And so that it was a bit shocking to see, and we were we spent days just being baffled about, but how, talking to the police, but how did you think that you can just, what is this, what do you think we're living in fascist regime? It's what are you doing? Anyway, so I feel it's a question for us if this is just, is it just an isolated event, or does it really actually indicate a new age of repression and of, increased police force repression in the cities, and it's a repression that is very it becomes more justified in the eyes of just the everyday person in society, right? Because of the normalization of the military and the normalization of the war. So everything and the pandemic as well, of course. So it feels it feels more justified that these things can happen. So this is something that I would, I feel on the question of eviction risks, this is something that we need to really be, look out for this and be really very conscious that this probably is happening. Yeah, and then I would go to my contribution to the handbook is actually a more a smaller version of a guide on how to represent evictions. And the guide is designed for people who are journalists, who are researchers, who are doing some sort of an art project, right? So people who are not activists, who are coming from outside of a movement or outside of that specific community that is being evicted, and they want to represent the eviction. Because the issue is, in all of these years of fighting evictions, this has been something that we've encountered so many times. People come and they're like, yeah, I want to do a little article, journalistic article about the eviction. They want to take pictures, they want to write about it, and we're like, yeah, sure, no problem, and they write it and it's crap, It's a disgusting piece of writing, They're just reproducing racist, classist shit, And you're like, well, why did you, what? So we can't, as activists, right? We can't control, you know, we can't like have journalists here and then we're like, you have to send me the text and I will, you know, like check it. I mean, that's not sustainable in the sense that we don't have resources for that. And similarly, it happens with people who do art projects. They want to do like a little art project about like how people are living in the evicted camp, you know, and they come and take pictures and when they want to do drawings, whatever. And also like researchers, you know, they're like doing a big research on evictions, on housing precarity, and they have like this whole like thing, right? They have like their methodology, da da da, and they come and they're like, yeah, we want to do that. And so the point is, there is so much lost time and resources discussing with these people and then facilitating entry for them in a situation of eviction. And these people, you know, they do shit, you know, they actually damage the whole situation. So this has, you know, and after this experience, we kind of realized that we need like a very kind of like integrated approach on this whole situation. So then we were like, if any journalist, artist, researcher contacts us and they want to do like some sort of material on an eviction, firstly, we will make sure that they are supporting the movement. If they do not explicitly support the movement and our anti-racist, anti-capitalist position, we do not give them any kind of access of any kind. Goodbye. Like, that's it. And because we don't have time to negotiate and to educate people who have a lot of privilege to get informed and educated on themselves, you know? I mean, yeah. So, and, you know, from that point, we kind of also realized that it's also not enough to just say, you don't support us, goodbye. But it could also actually be helpful if we would, you know, create some tools for these people to be a bit more conscious, right? So just to help them, actually. So then this is how this guide kind of came about. And basically in the guide, and I really, I'm very interested in also like your opinion on it, and if, you know, if this would be something that, for example, in the coalition, we could even think about a guide like that would be like some sort of like international guide, you know? Because in the end, like art research and journalism, I mean, they're kind of the same everywhere. I mean, you know, it's like the ethical, you know, the ethical problems of these fields are the same everywhere. It's not like they are special in Eastern Europe, you know? So, so basically in the guide, which is called The Ethics of Solidarity and, you know, the representation of evictions, and so Guide for Ethical Representation of Evictions, something like that. This is the Romanian version. Yeah, we also, like, we identify like common tropes that these people have. You know, they have like good intentions on their on the way they produce the material, but then they actually fall into some like bad stereotypes and tropes that they don't realize they're reproducing with their good intentions, right? Such as a charitable approach, you know, they're like, oh, these poor people, da da da. This is very, you know, problematic and bad. Then the fact that they publicize personal information or information that is actually very that puts people in danger, right? So this kind of like idea to make everything visible at all costs. Not everything needs to be visible, because making things visible can attract like, you know, authorities and police and all of that. So, yeah. And so this is a part of, yeah, the guide is like this, identifying these tropes, and then, you know, how to build you know, an ethical material. So then, you know, what are the questions? Thinking about the audience, thinking about the consequences, and all of that. And yeah, so it's also questions for you. If maybe at some point we could think about creating a guide that would be, you know, produced by the coalition, and it can actually be used by anyone in any context. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And now I would like to give the mic to Ivana from the roof from Serbia.
Thank you. I come from Belgrade, from Serbia. I joined the roof in 2019, and I will tell you my story of what has happened so far. I joined after having lived in Italy for a while, being part of the housing movement, and when I came back to Serbia, the roof was quite a prominent organization. We were very present in the media. We had loads of evictions, not like in Spain or Italy, never. So mind you, it's also a post-socialist country where a lot of people own property where they live, and we still haven't had as many mortgages and stuff like that. So nevertheless, it was very popular, very visible. I think that the bailiffs have become the most, I don't know how to say this, like the worst profession there is around. Like there is so much hatred in the public, and I think that we managed to raise awareness on this thing. So I thought, okay, this is really good. Like this is a very good way to mobilize people, because people do show a lot of hatred. They do show a lot of shock as well. And I think that one of the tactics that was working pretty well for us was this sort of tabloid journalism that Veda was talking so much against, because people were really in shock that you could evict someone in the street and that there are no consequences, and that many times they only work for their profits. We have private bailiff system. I don't know if this is the case everywhere. So I thought, okay, this is really good. This is a very good opportunity for us. And when I came, there were always around 25, 30 people in the meetings. We had many disputes, but it was very dynamic. We had calls from all over the country. We had 3 branches in Serbia. And in 2020, we even managed to, during the pandemic, we managed to help a lot of people who didn't deal with evictions, because there was a short period of ban of evictions, but we had calls from people, from poor people, so we managed to give them money, food, medication. Like in Belgrade, we only managed to help 2,000 families in a 3-month period, and we also got a lot of money from the citizens. At that time, around 40,000 euros from citizens, which is quite a lot of money for Serbia. So this is, we talked about the budget today, and I think this is also one way to think about our money and potential source. But what do you have to accomplish to get that money? You have to be visible, you have to be present, and you have to be relevant. Next year, we had a very prominent case of a man. I'm not going to get into detail, but he had more than 15 attempts of evictions. Like what we do, I don't know if this is common for everyone, but we stand in front of the door. We don't film from elsewhere. We stand in front of the door and we don't let the police come in. So we film with our phones, and the police in Serbia, this is also a difference, I think, here than they're milder in Serbia, so they don't beat the shit out of us. They just stand there and watch, and they feel very uncomfortable. I think this is more similar maybe to Romanian context than Italian or even French or UK or Spain. So this man, at some point, like when they decided that that was it, that they don't want to make another attempt, he tried to hang himself, and that went viral all over the news, all over media, and people saw this. And all of a sudden, do you know what happened? We had a drop in the calls. So he got evicted. We had a drop in the calls. I think that the people realized that this was in a way futile, and that they did not want to go through this shit themselves. We got a drop from our donors, like people stopped giving us that much money, and we also experienced a shortage in people who wanted to join. Now, like in 2021, we had 30-something evictions. In 2022, only around 20 people that we defended. I'm not talking about the total numbers of evictions that took place in Serbia, but the calls that we received from people. And now we are 5, 6, 7 active people, with, of course, some more around us who still join in from time to time, but we're experiencing a deep crisis. And I think that we made some mistakes, and I want to tell you about these mistakes, and I also want to tell you about what we could maybe learn from other people here. I think that at one point we did not realize that this short period of popularity that we had, that was actually promising to mobilize a lot more people and change something, was a very short period, and that the topic that we stick to is, you know, like something that happens, people are in shock for a while, and then afterwards they move to different things. A lot of other things happened in Serbia that drew much more attention. Another mistake, I think, so we were not flexible enough to move to other topics. I think that we should include other relevant housing issues or debt-related issues such as tenancy, or there are other ideas, but I think that it's very important to recognize when this happens. And I think that we're a little bit late, better late than never, but yeah, still late, and it's more difficult to mobilize more people now. Another mistake was that we haven't included enough people who were affected by evictions from the very beginning. And I think it's because we had this attitude of, oh, we're going to help you. We are the ones who will do all the work. We understand that you have troubles with dealing with your daily life, with money and so on, with your families. And so far, we've managed to include just a couple of people affected by eviction. So most of us are, like the majority, are just activists. And I think that activists get tired, and they also get tired of the same topic. They want to do something else, especially younger people. They're now interested in ecology or other questions that arise in the society. Another mistake I think we made was that we failed in organizing in a more structured way. I think that it was more or less spontaneous until now, but we managed to maybe make something that was more durable or maybe more solid, you know, so that it could survive these changes. We were hoping that people would be coming all the time. And I think that another mistake that we made was that we were not approaching people enough. So we leaned onto this popularity that we had at some point, like that lasted for 3 years maybe. And we were not approaching people, we were not knocking doors, we were not distributing flyers, we did not put stands all over the city. And I think that this is something that we have to do if we want to survive as an organization. So I hope that somehow we will manage, but I think that we can learn from other people who have more members, who have managed to tackle more diverse issues maybe than we did, and that they also recognize the changing in their society situation, so that they would not be put down by lack of flexibility. That is at least my story, and I hope that maybe some of you can learn from this, and maybe you can tell us something more positive and encouraging at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Ivana. I also think it's important to focus on mistakes. So maybe in the discussion we can think more about this aspect as well, like what each of the movements considers something that they should not repeat. And I would like to give the mic to Teresa from Habita, Portugal.
Thank you. So first of all, I would like to say that in the handbook, the text that was written by Habita was written by Carlota, not me. And it's basically tells the story of the origins of Habita as a movement that actually started within the movement of the rights to immigrants and within a struggle against the demolition of self-built neighborhoods in the Lisbon metropolitan area, which were neighborhoods that were basically composed by racialized communities, immigrants, or second, third generation of immigrants. And this is, if we look at the situation now and the current eviction risks that we face, this is still a problem that we have today. So right now we are still struggling with the demolition of self-built neighborhoods in the Lisbon metropolitan area. But we have also other issues, of course. So we have, Anna talked about this yesterday, that our rental law became very liberalized in 2012. And in 2019, we had a change, again, in the rental law, which was apparently good, that in renewable contracts, the landlords could not oppose the renovation within the first 3 years. And this is a good thing. What happened is that landlords found out about this and they started imposing non-renewable contracts of very short duration. So a lot of people have like 1 year or 2 year contracts, non-renewable, so either they get evicted after this period or they are imposed much higher rent prices. We also have a lot of people that don't have written contracts, which is even a deeper level of this precarious situation. And we also are facing a lot of evictions of families that are squatting public houses that are empty. And this is actually something that became huge in Portugal in general, not just in Lisbon, actually. And so to talk a bit about the tactics that we use, and they are proving to be useful, I would like to start by telling you about the assemblies that we organize, the resistance assemblies that we organize, and it's mainly through these assemblies that we get people, that we get the cases, that people come to us with the situations that they are facing. And so we have these twice a month, and it's an open door policy, so everyone can come. And we implemented this strategy that everyone has to, we sit in a circle, and everyone needs to present their situation to everyone else. And then also everyone can participate in the debate of that situation. So the idea is that, first of all, it's not centralized on the activists of Habita, like everyone can participate, and we try to implement not just individual solutions for every person that needs one, but also to make people realize that housing is not an individual problem, it's a collective problem, and so we also have to come up with collective solutions. And we try also to implement mutual support between everyone that is facing a housing problem, and also to share knowledge. So it's also very common that people that were having a struggle with housing and that search for Habita's help at some point continue coming or come after, and they help other people that are facing similar situations. And this is something that really helps because it brings a lot of knowledge, a lot of try and error tactics, basically. Regarding more specific tactics that we use to face evictions, so first of all, something that we always try to do is to delay the eviction as much as possible. So we use all of the legal mechanisms that we can to delay it. So basically, first of all, we advise people not to accept the eviction, obviously. So not to to contest the opposition to the renovation of the contract, or to oppose the legal notifications from the courts to get a public defender, to change the locks. So we always advise people to delay the process as much as possible, which gives time to try to come up with a strategy to face this. So this is something that is very basic in the assemblies. We also, as was said before even, so we try to block evictions or demolitions with our presence, so with our body. So we try to block the police from entering, and we try to prepare beforehand if we can. So by organizing, for example, we've done it in the past, solidarity breakfasts at people's houses, to be there when the eviction is about to happen. We try to gather as much media coverage as possible, and also through social media. And we have a WhatsApp group called Resistance to Evictions. There has more or less 130 people that we use in the situations of emergency where we know that an eviction is about to happen or a demolition is going to happen, and so we try to call people on this WhatsApp group so that everyone as possible goes to this. And of course, our strategy also is to shame the landlords and the social workers on these situations through social media and media coverage. We also participate and we help people participate in institutional spaces that are set up for discussion with the citizens, like the municipal assemblies and this sort of thing. So where they go and they expose the situation that they are facing, and they never do it alone, or we try to organize in a way that they don't do it alone, that they go always with a group. And this, of course, again, shames the public institutions, puts pressure on them, and also legitimizes the escalation of conflict sometimes. So other things that we do is we invade public institution offices, and we demand to be heard, we demand to get a meeting in that moment, and we did it quite recently. We invaded the offices of the Ministry of Housing, and this is also something that we also try to do with as many people as possible in a collective way. And it's like the strategy is that some people will go inside and other people will stay outside and will keep protesting while the meeting is happening, and we also try to bring media coverage to this. And then to make it even more specific now, we started using this. There is the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, and Portugal signed it, and Portugal also signed an optional protocol that contains a complaint and inquiring mechanism, which is very useful because what allows is that in situations of an eviction that can be either done by the state or in a landlord situation, a private landlord situation, and the person is going to be evicted without any solution, which is the case almost all of the times. There is this possibility to complain to the United Nations, to ask them to prevent the eviction from happening, or if the eviction had happened already, to implement, to impose on the Portuguese state an interim measure while the case is being evaluated. And this is something that has worked quite well, at least for now. We've done it. We had 3 successful cases. It takes a lot of work, but I think it compensates because they respond very quickly. So it's something that timely is very efficient, and there is this attitude of the Portuguese state that they will comply with this interim measure that is imposed by the United Nations. And this is something that also allowed us to get a bit of media coverage on this, because it's something that not a lot of people, I mean, almost no one knows about this mechanism. And so it's like it was a new mechanism for a lot of people to see, and it was successful, at least for now, 3 times, which is great for us. I would also like to point out that because of the way that we try to organize people that squat, families that squat public houses, and because we always had this this perspective that that it's important that these neighborhoods fight collectively, because what the state does always is they try to negotiate case by case and try to divide people, and we try to counter this. And through this work too, we managed to now that now the municipality of Lisbon is considering and is discussing making the regularization of all of the squattings of public houses that are at the moment. Of course, with a few exceptions and with a few rules that we are not so happy about, but at least this is something that is a great victory, that they are considering letting people stay exactly where they are. I'm fidgeting, sorry. And one last thing that was also a very legal and political win that we would like to point out is that at the beginning of the pandemic, Habita and Stop Evictions collective, that we work very closely, wrote a letter that was later worked a bit more and subscribed by a lot of different organizations and collectives, and it was given to the government and to the parties that are in the Portuguese parliament with a demand to stop all evictions in the pandemic during this period. And this immediately was put in the parliamentary discussion, and soon after this law was implemented. And for us, this was also a big victory. We also did a social media campaign, how to quarantine without a home. And this was something that only now this law is going to be taken down. So we could actually still use it a few times after the pandemic was over. And just to finish, with this question about how a transnational network could work and for us and help us in this topic of evictions, I think that it's this direct communications with the UN is already a perfect example of how these transnational networks can work for us, because we knew about it from PA. And then we also told it to Stefano, which is a comrade in Italy, in an organization of also Stop Evictions. And it's actually a tool that works in Italy. They used it a lot, actually, even more than us. And now the Italian government doesn't give a fuck about the UN, basically. So it stopped working, but they used it a lot, and it worked many times. And I think that this is exactly the kind of thing that these networks can work for. It's to share information about tactics that might work and share knowledge, and also because we share a lot of the common enemy. We share a lot of common enemies too. The states, they are different, but still, and also some private entities like Blackstone, Airbnb, Apollo. So it's important that we manage to share all of the knowledge that we have collectively so that we can implement these strategies and see if they work or not. That's it. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. And now, Mari from the Tenant Union of Barcelona.
Hi. We are an organization, the Tenants Union, that was born in 2017, and it was created by a group of activists who detected that the rent was going to be the next big struggle in housing in Barcelona, and then it was everywhere. But before that time, renting was residual in Spain. most people own houses, or people, when left their home, they took a mortgage and owned a property. But the big crisis in 2008 put a stop to this, and a lot of people lost their housing, so these people had to go live somewhere, went to the rent, so the investor said, oh, rent is now, let's go to rent too. So that's when, why these activists really saw it in time, and when the big struggle began, we were there, we were prepared. And we have grown quite a lot in the time. We are now all around Catalonia. We have lots of sections, nearly 3,000 affiliates. And about the evictions, I don't really think we have more than before, because we had quite a lot already, and they didn't really stop during the pandemic, even if the government said, yes, we are going to put a stop to because they only stopped the evictions that were caused by the pandemic, but all the evictions of things that went from before, people that already were poor, continued, so there was never a stop. But there has been a rise in the violence of them, not only in the police they send, because sometimes to an eviction they send a quantity of police that people in the neighborhood thinks that maybe some terrorists or drug dealers, very dangerous, live there, and it's just an eviction of a family with kids. But also, there's repression in the form of fines. The people that goes to the door and tries to stop the eviction, they then get fined, but 250 euros maybe. That's where we use the resistance money for this, because of course people then don't have to pay that from their pocket. And there's also violence, in psychological violence, in the form for some time now of open date evictions. The judges, when they have tried to evict someone quite some times, and the activist have managed to stop it, being a lot of people on the door and helping people present the correct papers. In the end, the judge gets tired of this, and it's an open date. Between this day and this other date, anytime, police can come and take these people out. So this makes it very difficult to be at all times at the door, and it's a very psychological pressure to the people that's going to be evicted. Luckily, the government has taken a new law, and this is supposed to end, but we will see. But all this violence really makes the moment of the eviction very hard. So what we do is fight not to get to that moment. Of course, this is very idealistic, but we have some tactics for that. So the first things we do, and we think that's one of the big successes in our organization, is that we never wanted to be a social service. There's social services for that. We don't believe in welfarism, or however it's pronounced, but in activism. So as soon as someone arrives with a problem, they become the main activist of their own cause. Even before they realize they are, as they cross the door, we already know, look, another activist. We don't have offices where people can come, meet us, tell the problem, and come tomorrow and we will see. No, we have a local, but it's not for that. Anyone wanted to approach us has to come to one of the assemblies. Every territory has one. In Barcelona, it's weekly. It's every Friday, and people come, we sit in a circle, and then everybody exposes their case, and the rest of the assembly help with, this happened to me, or this, there's this law, this thing, this other thing. And so together we give them tools, and hopefully we will solve the case. They also have to affiliate themselves, paying a fee that depends on the money the people have, of course. But this is another thing that we think it's very important to the success of our organization, that we are financed only by the fees the affiliates paid. We don't receive external money. If someone wants to give a donation, we accept it, of course. But we are not funded by any organization outside us, so we can control what we have, what we don't have. It's a tight budget, but it's ours. But going back to the assemblies, they come, they explain their case, and the most common case is what we call a silent eviction, or the danger of a silent eviction. And silent eviction is when the contract ends and the landlord says that I'm not going to renovate, you have to return the key, or okay, you want to renovate, we are going to put this exorbitant price and people can pay. And normally what people did in these cases, and some people still do, is, okay, what can I do? I return the key, I leave my home silently without many fuss, and we said, no, this silent eviction has to be over. Evictions don't need to be silent. We have to make noise, make a fuss, there's no shame, and we are going to fight for the right to stay at our home. So we created a campaign, our main campaign that it's ongoing since the beginning. It's called Ens quedem in català. It means we stay. And the first thing any newcomer hears when they arrive is that they are no longer alone, that their case is not the only one, that it's not the fault, it's the system's fault, and that we are going to work on it, but we give them homework. The first day, there's homework for them, because we have 3 steps that are essential for any tenant to start working on their case. The first one is information. We have to investigate the property to know who we are dealing with. It's a big landlord, it's a small landlord, it's a vulture fund, it's a bank. All of this, it's very useful in the tactics we can use, it's not the same. The other point is organization. You have to talk to your neighbors, knock on the doors. If the property is vertical, maybe all the building is from the same landlord. So the chances are you are not the only one. So knock the doors of your neighbor, explain your problem. If they are not having the problem now, they may have it in the future. And if not, maybe they are not going to have the problem, but they can help you anyway. And the third step is affiliation, as I mentioned, because you are stronger with 3,000 people behind you than alone. And then we work. The base of this Ens quedem is that as long as you are living in your home, it's your home. You're paying for it, even if it's monthly, and no one can expel you from it except a judge. Only a judge can kick you out, and even then, there's a margin for getting a good solution after that. So don't worry, remain calm, and we work. Of course, we always say that as far as they can. Maybe there's people that can't, but as far as they can, they have to keep paying the same rent they were paying already, not the new one. Because in Spain, eviction because of a debt is much quicker than an eviction because of the expiry of the contract. The expiry of the contract can take between one thing and another legally can take 1 year, 2 years. So we have a lot of time to negotiate, to try to talk, but if you stop paying, maybe it's just a question of 1 or 2 months. So as long as people can, we recommend to keep paying. And how we negotiate, we have a process that is escalating. We start with a letter, an email from the Sindicat. This people is with us now, we want to sit down and negotiate. If not, we can make a phone call. If not, we may visit their offices. Some cases are an easy win. the people receive the mail, they see the Sindicat, I don't want any problem, yes, let's go and talk. In other cases, the property doesn't answer at all. So we move these cases from the assembly to the group of syndical action, that it's smaller, and they think more radical and impactful strategies. Press conferences, demonstration, open-air assemblies on the street so all the neighborhood can know, crowded visits to their offices, to the mayor, to whoever. Of course, the better organized the block, as I was saying, the better chances we have to win. We don't have to forget that capitalism is very organized. We have the example of the MIPIM, of the gas conference in Vienna, so we have to be organized too. And for that, is the aim of the Sindicat to have the biggest number of tenants organized before the conflict starts even. As I told before, we believe in early organization. So we realized that a lot of those cases were from the same landlord, not only in the same building, but all over Barcelona. We have Blackstone, Cerberus, Divarian, that are big vulture funds, but we also have big owners, big names in the city of Barcelona that maybe have 3, 4, 10 blocks in the city. The same real estate agency having the contracts of thousands of people. So we started grouping these people together to better organize actions in smaller groups, not only the assembly. And the next step, of course, was to look for the tenants in their homes before they came for us. So we started to do door-to-door actions. We have a group of people that works in the shadows. They have created a database, investigating properties, looking for addresses, the best routes to cover, the biggest properties in the less time possible. It's very impressive. They are very intelligent people, and we are very lucky. And with the maps and lists that they do, we organize brigades that go door to door, sometimes hundreds of homes in the same day. And we inform the neighbors, do you know who your owner is? Do you know this? They have done this and this and this in these other properties. How many years of contract do you still have? And of course, we invite them to come to the assemblies and to start organizing before they have the problem. And I'm going to give just 2 examples of how this works. The first one is against La Caixa. La Caixa is a bank in Catalonia that it's nearly a national symbol because it's a Catalan bank. And it's one of the biggest owners in Catalonia, and also have a kind of a social foundation that has a lot of contracts of social housing. But the social housing can lose the status in 10, 15 years. And what La Caixa does after this time is evict the people that were living in this social tenancy and sell the property as a private. So we organized this door-to-door through all Catalonia, and we were able to hold a massive demonstration against La Caixa 15 days ago. It was a quite impressive demonstration of more than 1,000 people. And we also managed to push some city councils to call out on La Caixa and their practices publicly, because we are at the doors of an electoral campaign, and of course it worked because of that, maybe if there was no electoral campaign. But they publicly shamed La Caixa and asked for them to stop these practices. And another example is with Rentas, that it's not a vulture fund or a bank or anything, but it's like a real estate agency. And we realized that a lot of homes in Barcelona belong to them. So we made a 2-day massive door-to-door action, and more than 100 people affiliated to the Sindicat after those 2 days. It was the biggest success we've had. And in very few months, they have been able to denounce the bad practice from their owners and get their money back, a lot of money back from fraudulent fares. So, and they will be holding a massive assembly in a few days, so big that we have to ask other people to lend us a local because they can be held in our local. So in the end, these three steps I was talking, information, organization, and affiliation, it's the main base, even if it's a small tenant or a big tenant. It's the same idea, only the better organized you are, the better the fight. And I just wanted to end with a cry that we hear in evictions in Barcelona when we are at the door. One of the things that we say is, look at what you found, an organized neighborhood. And I think it's very beautiful, but at the same time, it should scare owners all around.
Thank you. And now, last but not least, Peter from Anti-Eviction Berlin.
Thanks. I'm going to try to be short. I feel a lot has been said, actually. I have the feeling that the more similar the context, the more similar the entire organization. So the last two examples were, yeah. I am going to talk about Stop Evictions Berlin. That is a group that is pretty old, and over 10 years. We have been trying to stop evictions. I think what is in the book, the text in the book is mostly talk about our structures and how the whole thing is a praxis that is really based on a very stable structure that is self-maintaining and that is always there. I think for us this is the core of the whole thing, that it's a space, both a space with both a group of people that are always there and you can always count on. We have a weekly assembly, so the past maybe 11 years this assembly was there every week, and this, I think, is most important, and this is what the text talks about mainly. I think there is I'm not sure I can answer the question about tactics, because I feel that there's that's an incredible amount of tactics that we tried. There's even more tactics that we heard of and discussed about, or you know, heard of in all these international meetings and so on. I think that the cases are so different, and as you also said, the cases are so different. The evictors are so different, and the people who you work with to stop their evictions together are so in such a different stage and mental state, and are also so different. So I think it's more useful to talk about strategies. I think our power is exactly in the ability to use tactics and change quite dynamically due to thanks to the very frequent weekly assemblies. And I think this diversity of tactics is what the power lays in. This is our experience. So. To just like try and error, but also inside the case, so to say, and also to create this atmosphere of nobody knows what to count on, and you can surprise always. So I think we had a period of very crazy success in the beginning, when we really managed to mobilize hundreds of people to stop evictions, to block evictions literally, and this has been not the case so much. We do manage to postpone or stop evictions or negotiate better conditions, but we are less able to stop evictions with our bodies and to literally block evictions. And I think here I can come to the point to what our difficulties are. I think we are confronting a more and more militarized police force and a police force that is able to get more and more resources and be more efficient. I don't know how much this is thanks to also our success in the beginning as direct answer, but it is true that there are many evictions where we and by we I talk about a bit the wider movement in Berlin, because it's not there is no possibility to basically physically oppose it, and I can talk about the examples of a few big evictions of squats, mostly where we saw basically a military intervention with involving helicopters and shit. So there we come, and I think that's also something that what is an answer to the transnational question. I think that is a trend, that is a tendency. I don't know how much in Eastern Europe, but that's what we see in France and Germany very strongly, that this is also inscribed in legislation. So there's a lot of laws that make it easier for cops to enforce whatever they need to enforce. So I think that's one of the big trends that we can. It's important to mention. Another problem for us in Germany, I feel that the German state is very efficient in separating or like in intervening in very tricky small welfare measures or subventions in ways in which we cannot unite forces in some moments. So as an example, in Germany it was unimaginable to make a rent strike because there was some one-time subvention for people, then other categories that were like having different situations. So in the end, you cannot really, and that's also what people. But it's also sort of a myth related to that. I feel a lot of people would completely trust what the law or like what the official force institutions and the judiciary system will tell them. And yeah, what we've been very successful in, I feel, and we still do that, is exactly to question this very thing. So to show that there is ways to play. Even in Germany, there is ways to force to go. So to say to go below the legal decision of a court on stop evictions, even if it seems that it's already decided over it. And to the question of transnational networking, I feel personally that in Berlin what we miss is much more at this moment is a federal. Like I feel that there's no collaboration on the federal level in Germany. That is a really big problem because a large part of the legislation related to tenancy and evictions are actually federal law. So you cannot really achieve anything on the long term in Berlin. I feel that transnational organizing or networking is there. It's great. But it really misses, like the next stage, I believe, would be to try to work on that level, because that's actually the most relevant level of lawmaking, let's say. And this is also what we saw in Berlin, that every small success on the municipality level created an insane backlash on the federal level, and laws were just cancelled and so on. So I think I would give it over. I think I really enjoyed listening to all your tactics, because I really hear the same processes, and I also think that there's it's exciting to see how organically also we come often to the same conclusions and same ways of the struggle. But yeah, I think we can just start discussing on that because.
Thank you, and thank all of you again. Now, if somebody has a question, I can drop the mic there. So it's time for discussions. Or if you have questions for each other, of course, but maybe let's see if the public, yeah.
I was just wondering in general, because Portugal, you mentioned your tactics of shaming. So I was just wondering how much access do you have to the people making these decisions? Because what we did in Sweden, if you have somebody's name, you can just do a Google search and you get their address. So we went to the politicians' homes who were making the decision, and we asked them and filmed them, why are you throwing people on the street? So I was wondering, do you have that kind of access to the people making the decisions?
There's another mic for you.
We don't, sometimes we personalize it like this, not in a way that we would go to a politician's house or anything, not like in that such a intimate way, I would say. But for example, with the municipal squattings, you know, so like the squattings of public houses, the majority of people that are in those situations are single moms with kids. So it's quite easy in that situation to put it out there in the media in a way that we can make it look very disgusting, that they are kicking out a single woman with kids. In a lot of situations, they are, for example, victims of domestic violence, or, you know, so it's because of the cases that we can shame them. It's because of the fact that that people that are affected by, or most of the people that are highly affected by the housing crisis are very vulnerable families. So it's usually these cases of kids, families with just one mom, or so this is how we kind of shame them in this way. It's because of the people that they evict.
Actually, we also shamed one time in a connecting way the city hall when a 3-year-old kid was taken into court for illegally occupying a house where she was living with her father and mother, and we put the name of city hall members and the mayor in kids' shoes and put the kids' shoes on the pavement in front of the city hall, and they were like brutally smashed by the guards, you know, like they were like taking the shoes away, and it looked on pictures like very like what the fuck. Mari? Yeah.
We in the Sindicat, we have the relationship with the politicians. It's more not hidden, because we don't hide it, but it's more behind closed doors that we say, because for one, we talk to them when we want them to do something with, please, you have to make this law, because, so, but on the other hand, especially in Barcelona with the government that it's supposedly friend of us, because the mayor was part of PA in the past, we have the names of some of these people, and we can call them directly. This is happening, are you going to come, or are you not going to show up? But we don't go to their houses, because in Spain, with the thing of they have an anti-terrorist law that they could easily say you are doing an act of terrorism and lock you in prison. So it's better to do it quietly and not so. But it should be very interesting to be able to go to their homes.
Annika, you had a question?
So first of all, thank you for reminding us what a political activist for housing justice is doing and how complex and difficult the mission is, because we are not taking on the role of the state. We don't want to make, as Mari said, social services. We tend to remind the state about its social responsibilities, and also pinpoint the role of, how should we call them, simply, we call it capital, or the big economic actors who are making profit of the way in which our cities are developed. I very much appreciate Peter's and Veda's question about placing this issue of how the state intervenes during evictions, and how state violence becomes more and more stronger, and if this is related to the current militarization. I would say that this is another level of it, for sure, but in Romania we saw it priorly. So it's, I don't know, because you know, Romania got integrated into global capitalism in times when neoliberalism was already very strong everywhere. So the state violence was actually present during the whole 30 years of these capitalist transformations in our country. So, for example, yeah, we had these evictions in Cluj during the 1990s, which were group evictions, always done with the involvement of gendarmerie and local police. The huge eviction in 2010, which was also organized was actually a strong police and gendarmerie intervention. So what I would like to say that, yeah, maybe our local context makes that the state used many different instruments of violence against people, starting with the 1990s. Yeah, we can also speak about before, but yeah, just stick to this period of time. And we can also remember about the pandemic, right? When, well, everybody was supposed to fight against the virus, and we just figured out that the state is fighting against people. Again, and there were many violent interventions into Roma communities across the country, like, you know, finding the real enemy of the society and making it very visible and mediatized. So it wasn't even a shame to do that. It was a assumed, rationally planned police intervention against people who, well, could or could not respect strictly the rules of the lockdowns, because they did not have a proper home, and so on and so forth. Yes, militarization is stronger nowadays, but unfortunately we have a longer history of state violence. Yeah, I don't know if we political activists of housing justice can do something against it.
Yes, thank you. Just in brackets before the next question, because we arrived to this topic of also racism and Roma communities and the repression against them, that tomorrow will be another discussion about the anti-racist housing movement. Eugen will be here again, and more of our colleagues from social housing now, and we will see a movie exactly about evictions from at the end of the 90s and 2000 from Cluj, after which maybe we can also hear more about the group eviction of 350 people in 2010 and discuss more of these issues. Eva, yeah.
Yes, I want to say that first of all, thank you very much. I think this discussion was really very interesting. Yeah, it was nice. So I have many things to say. First of all, Veda mentioned the idea of having an anti-eviction booklet, a transnational anti-eviction guide. Media guide. Okay. So this made me think that tomorrow morning at 10 or 10:30, I don't remember, but in the morning, here we will speak about anti-eviction guides that were produced by different groups of the coalition. So if you want to come to this workshop, it would be nice to share and to continue the discussion tomorrow morning, because one of the aims we have as a coalition is also to make accessible all the tools that exist on anti-eviction struggles on our website, so that all the groups from each country can use some ideas and inspire themselves from this. So it's a big project, we need some help, so you are welcome to start with us tomorrow morning. Then I want to say that for me it's very, not only one of the main reasons why the coalition exists is anti-eviction struggles, so it's for me the most important struggle I feel, because it's not because the others are not important, but it's like the point. It's a point on time where things happen very violently. Like the system attack is very clear at this precise moment where an eviction will happen, and so I consider it's a very important fight. And I like the fact that you showed all the different points how you organize. From my experience in Athens, to react to what Ivana said about the roof in Serbia, I think that these kind of fights can never be the same in time. So they are always dependent of how the system evolves. And in a way, I think it's a bit normal that some groups have a peak of success, then it falls a bit because there is something happened that made it weaken. For example, in Greece, it was the Syriza government that weakened the movement. We can develop that in an informal discussion. But anyway, and now only after some years, some very good activists here took patience and continued the struggle by being very small number, and then now they are becoming again very strong. So this vague is, I think, a very normal thing, and okay, there are errors, of course, everybody is doing errors, but I feel it's something that we should also consider, that our movements cannot be strong always. They have their moments. And then I wanted also to react to what Mari said from Barcelona about silent evictions, because they still happen so much in so many cities I have been, and there is a new form of silent eviction I feel appeared now with the energy crisis, which is when they cut your electricity and your heating. Because when you are in a house, when you don't have electricity, I mean, it's a form of eviction also. So, yes, I just wanted to say it because I experienced it in a squad that I'm involved more and more these past months. And it's a squad where also children are living. And for me, it was one of the most stressful moments to know that people are living in this place without electricity, without heating in a cold time of the year. So yes, I wanted to raise that we have also to face now new forms of evictions that we didn't experience so much before. And one final thing, and then I stop, sorry I speak too much, but I want to say that, is that this year, also the past months, I was lucky to see a transnational collaboration against evictions, which I think are very important. So one of them was, it's a woman in Athens who had illness and had to stop working. She could not pay her debt. She had a small debt, not for her house, but for other stuff. And there was a Cypriot company called Greek Wolf. I want to say their name because it's, they are very bad. And this company, they sent her many letters, but the last one was saying, we have already sent you many letters, you are in our property, you are squatting, we are going to evict you, and if you call the movement to protect you or the media, we will ask for money, we will put you to the court, and we will ask you to pay for the damage you do to the name of our company. So they were very appealing. And so we went to the assembly, the anti-eviction assembly in Athens. We talked about this letter, and we said, okay, let's do more shame, more noise, because it annoys them very much. And then we called our comrades in Cyprus, who organized an action 1 week later, and they were in front of the offices of these Greek Wolf enterprises. And since then, so this enterprise was appealing for, in 5 days they will evict her, but now it's more than a month and a half, and they haven't spoken to her, they haven't went to her house, they haven't done anything. So we gained some time, and I think it was a very nice transnational success against evictions. And I think that the coalitions, one of the coalition's roles in anti-eviction struggle is also, because landlords are becoming more and more transnational, it's also to fight against the landlords who are not particularly in the city where the tenants are or the indebted people are. Yeah, so I stop here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eva. Yeah, and just a reminder about booklets. There's also a French language anti-eviction guide from Brussels that Andreas brought, so if somebody wants. Yeah.
I have many questions, but I think I will ask two. You from the Sindicat of Barcelona, you said now when you go door by door, you say it's like a next activist. And Ivana from Belgrade, you also said no, it was a mistake that you not include like more people in the structure and in the fight. And I want to ask, yeah, how was the process that people, that you managed now to get more people into, or was the failure that not more people, or the difficult that people, because yeah, I feel also in our structure maybe we don't still not get to the point where people get more like this activist themselves and they are affected in a case. And yeah, the other thing is also you said that you make, when you have like a company and you have more people affected, then you try to unite, make a meeting with all people affected. Then you as a structure, you include this meeting in your structure, or you say, okay, you now have a meeting, our own structure, and will you support them in the way, or how it works? Yeah, that was, it's understandable, the two questions, or okay.
For the second question, that it's the easiest, when these people, they belong to our structure. Most of them, not the 200 people that will come to this assembly, but more than 100 of them are have affiliated. So yes, it's part of a structure, but instead of having them come to the weekly assembly that of course they will occupy all the space, we have smaller assemblies for specific groups so they can work on their problem. But yes, it's part of our structure, which is a struggle because the force of, even if we are a big structure, the people actually doing work, it's not so much, because we turn the people into activists for their case, but not all of them, when the case ends, not all of them remain working. There's people, and we have like new faces, and if you stop going to the assembly maybe 2 months because of illness or because of work or whatever, when you go, oh, this is new, I didn't know, because there's always someone that stays, but we don't know why some people stay after their case is solved or not solved, and why people don't. And we think it depends. There's people that believes more in bigger causes, and there's people that maybe once they have solved their case, it's not that they don't believe, but they have their day-to-day and then don't have time and prioritize different. But one thing we do is to try to have spaces not only for the fight, but also for fun. Maybe when the assembly ends, who wants to come and drink a beer? Or maybe we had in Barcelona, there's these festivities on St. George's Day. It's very important for Barcelona city. Everybody sells roses and buys books. And we had our own table, and we sell roses in our neighborhood. So people could see we were part of the cultural things of the city too, not only in our fight, and so people that maybe are not so technical in the fight can find a thing to do for the Sindicat, and this day they came and sell roses. And this is another thing that we try to find things for everybody that wants to help, they can help. We don't have to be all activists that have read the Capital.
Thank you. I want to say that I like very much to hear what Veda has to say, and I fully agree with being fed up with mostly journalists that mistreat our subject. And I want to relate that with the police question too, because and with our focus on eviction moment, because not only it's the moment where most things are revealed, but it is a moment where the kinds of our states are revealed, because we used to say in Habita that the state presents himself more with police than with social workers. And in a way, as well, social workers have turned in the kind of police of the state, because they control people's life when they give a little help and they want to know everything about your life because of that. So I really think that we can do a work on this, revealing how a state that should have a social arm, and it has a military arm instead, and how journalists don't care about that, because in our experience, we used to have, well, completely disproportionate police force to have evictions. Even it's a family with kids, they show up with 3 big cars full of police with helmets and arms and everything. And even it was one and a half months ago, 2 months ago, and even when we got journalists' TVs there, and it was very useful for us because since the TV was there, the police were kind of gentle. They didn't beat anybody, okay, and they were even a bit, how do you say it, scared of pushing us, because us and with all the people in the neighborhood, because they were being watched. But at the same time, when journalists told the story and came up with the story and with images, of course they mentioned the police was there. They could be not ignored, but it wasn't enough pointed out that it's too much violence to have police with guns pointed when you have children around. So I think we much need to make a work on that, trying to relate these things and say, and maybe ask, nowadays the housing subject is so important in Portugal that we receive many journalists calls saying, please, I have to have a case of someone being so and so and so. So maybe we just have to have a kind of casting thing saying, well, tell me your story. What you think about it first. What you think about it. Then afterwards we can talk. Something like that. But maybe we have to make a good work on that, pointing out these things. Our states are turning into military states and are completely forgetting their social obligations.
You don't want to reply, or?
I do, but I have like a whole list.
Okay.
I thought we were just collecting questions.
Yeah, let's collect one more then.
Thank you. Well, I have a question for Eugene from RomaJust. In Croatia, we faced the problems when we are working with Roma people in trying to find solutions for their housing issues, be it eviction or some kind of proactive, finding a sustainable alternative for stable housing. I wanted to ask if you, in the organization RomaJust, are working only on stopping evictions and lawyer help, legal help to Roma population in stopping evictions, or you are working to, I don't know, through some kind of long-term process with the population in thinking about the feasible and long-term housing solutions and the type of living space that would suit that would suit their needs. And particularly, I wanted to ask, do you have problems with the lack of documentation? Because sometimes it's difficult to arrange really functional help, because we face the fact that they sometimes lack the complete documentation, and the public authorities are completely ignorant about the fact that they are in need of some kind of understanding that the people living in such conditions it could happen that during their lives they do miss some documentation, and we are really we are having a problem in convincing some kind of traditional type of public service, people working in public services who are completely ignorant about that. So how do you fight this problem? Do you have any kind of solution to fighting for their housing rights, having in mind that they, I don't know, sometimes it's hard to prove their resident status or their, I don't know, the fact that they do, for example, satisfy some criteria in asking for help, but they apparently cannot easily demonstrate it because they lack some documentation. Thank you.
Yeah, so I made a little list here. I'm just gonna put stuff together. So Eva, I think I definitely, of course, these kinds of creating these kinds of documents are very, very important. My proposal, more specifically, was about a guide for ethical representation of evictions. So, because I feel like this is more easy to do, because as I was saying that art, research, and journalism are as problematic and as empowering, everywhere. It's not a very there's not very structural, geographical, geopolitical major differences between regions. So, so it's you can actually create, I feel like, a guide that actually could even work outside of Europe and so on. And I feel like a guide, I feel like probably just gathering, guides on anti-evictions is a good step, but I'm not sure if a guide of the coalition for anti-evictions, one kind of type of single thing can be, I'm not sure, but maybe, But as you were saying, this is all important work and a lot of work. Regarding the topic of repression and militarization, so one, and Maria Joao and Eniko were going back to that. I feel like for housing movements now, we are in a historical moment where housing movements actually have a very unique position in observing this. Because the housing movements are, there is a very kind of a big attention on the city, how the city is transformed, right? We know how to look at that. We pay attention. And we also monitor how housing conditions change through law and of course the advancement of capitalism. Second, and then third, we also we are also very observant of how living costs have changed, right? So because of these, because we have this unique position, we actually can understand very well how the fact that military tanks are passing through our cities, and the fact that evictions are now more, there's more police at evictions, and how the fact that if you don't pay your electrical bill, you end up being passible of criminal charges, all of these situations are actually linked. So I feel like, for me, I feel like the housing movements in Europe are actually in this very unique position to be very critical, radical, and very insightful to about how militarization currently is a new age of destruction and violence on our world. And the other one was because actually this is something about what Mari said with the Barcelona tenants movement, and you're saying that we are not a social service, you know. And I feel like when you said that, you know, there was so much emotion in me, and because, you know, in our context with the Common Front for Housing Rights, everyone feels like that we do not want to be a social service because we don't want, you know, there's this critique of we don't want to become just like an externalization of social, of services that should be done by the state. We don't want to do that. We are against that kind of thing. But what happens actually is that we are, you know, since 10 years now with the Common Front, you know, we are working with communities and with people that go through evictions and through violent stuff. And the whole idea is, you know, to kind of get them to join the struggle and for them to really decide on how the struggle looks like. And of course, other people like us who are also, you know, we also face housing injustice, but maybe not necessarily like this, are also part of that. But the thing is, it's so hard to create trust. So what happened actually is that in the process of creating trust, and, you know, in the process of you know, making people our comrades, you know, or creating together a movement, we end up to earn their trust, to help them, you know, make the social, apply for social housing or apply for all kinds of benefits and end up doing the social service. But, you know, we have, the goal is to earn their trust. But then after years of doing that, they still don't trust us, or what happens is that, you know, you do that and, you know, it's good, but then in the end, out of like 20 people, it's just one that actually joins as an activist the fight. So I'm not sure, you know, I know this is actually a question for many groups, and it's just something that just I'm putting it there, and it's, you know, it's very, painful but beautiful, and there's so many layers, and, you know, so just to say that.
I think that people don't trust that they can make a change. I think this is what we're dealing with, at least in my country. I believe it's somehow similar, and especially in the post-communist countries, you don't believe that you can make a change anymore, and you don't know what you are aiming for. And I find what Marie said very important and interesting. I think that we need, at least in these countries, to find some spaces and places where people can come and hang out. Because I see this tendency even among our comrades. They like to go out for a beer or do any kind of social activity, and I also feel that we lack spaces for these kinds of events. And we focus many times on people being very militant. Like, I was also one of these people, like saying, oh, we need more like organizers, like people who really want to get their hands dirty, and many times people don't want that. They can, you know, like whatever you mentioned, I think that we need more of these things, and then slowly they can maybe start changing their lack of trust into believing that they can do something.
Just one thing. Me, that I'm here today talking, the first thing I did for the Sindicat when I entered in 2019 was precisely sell roses for St. George's Day. So it's really important to have doors to open.
Okay.
Yeah, in our experiences that people react very differently to this space. Like we have both people that become super passionate, militant, long-term we have people who want to forget about this. They want to get just away from this whole history, and that's yeah. What I think is though that because how we understand it is not that we need to involve people on the long term. That is completely fine that somebody just moves forward. It's the question how you operate during that specific struggle, like that because I feel that many of the people that come to us they don't really understand the difference. They are advised mostly to come to us, but they don't really understand the difference between a state institution, maybe an independent NGO-like, or even private social service structure, and us. And that's fine because the people who come to us understanding it are coming from a specific scene, let's say, and we don't want to just work with that scene. But in the same time, it's a very important part of the practice that we try to say that we cannot do anything without you. It's the last word is always yours. You have to agree on every action that we make. You have to at least we also most of the things we don't do without a person coming or sending someone to represent. Because we cannot, like, I think that's what we understand, and that still puts a lot of questions. I think like, a lot of problems, because I feel that this way of acting still excludes some people. But I think that in our case, this has been developed in a moment when there was enough to do, and then we were not enough people to block every eviction, but or organize. It's clear that what we do at this specific moment is to show this very moment when the eviction is this very moment when the whole executionary system hits. It's when it's the last moment when the most brutal form of the whole displacement process, and that we have to show this, so to say, through what we do. So because I think that since since La Paz became so big, this was an issue. They were also, I think they were saying this, that we are not a social service, but yeah, of course there's not so easy to define and
I just wanted to add something on this. I think this is very fruitful discussion, and maybe tomorrow we can continue. I just wanted to mention how this anti-eviction fight started in Cluj, and I think this one relevant example, because after the mass eviction in 2010, people were looking for reparations. They were evicted by the municipality, and they wanted to be, they wanted not necessarily placed back, but they demanded some public solutions in terms of public housing mostly. And some of the later efforts kind of mirrored, or there were some reverberations of that kind of approach. So some of the anti-eviction actions that we took were somewhat guided by the idea of proving that there's a need for policy to avoid this kind of problems. So this is very different from I feel from what you're doing in Barcelona, and I think there's like we have so much to learn. But I was just reflecting on the fact, like, why don't we do that? Oh, yes, because there's a history here that we need to take into account, and this is what we did, I guess, for mostly having this kind of policy purposes in our minds. But in many ways, I feel like the kind of demonstrations that the present policy framework doesn't work. I mean, we kind of covered that. So we're now in a stage where I think we need to analyze like where we want to go further. Yeah, maybe tomorrow, and the whole idea of doing this kind of anti-eviction work as social assistance and stuff like that, I think this is very, very relevant.
Yes, so I will try to answer with my English. So RomaJust is not working only on housing. We are working in the discrimination in all levels. And I can say in Romania we have institutional racism. So when it comes about the documents, we have now in Romania, with the statistic, 100,000 people without documents. So what we have legal support in Romania, in 2018 we have a order from the ministry which each kid who is born in the hospital is not allowed to get out without documents. That is a big issue, and that was with a fight of the Roma organizations, and the hospitals have to have a commission when the kids and the families go out from the hospital. They have to have a certificate of born or some documents. When we speak about documents in housing, we have three situations, maybe four. So we have informal settlements, which there can go in the court to apply for property documents. We have legislation on that, but the costs it's too high, and we help them like organization with some projects and funding from other foundations or European funds or Norwegian funds, and our lawyers is working paid by the organization, is not but paid by people, and we call it a sort of pro bono, but in Romania pro bono is forbidden for the lawyers. We cannot do pro bono in the court because of the evasion, fiscal evasion. You know, you do not declare the funds. So, yeah, something about frauds. Yeah. So it's a complex situation of Roma community, and if it's possible, I can share with you some experience, and we can collaborate how we work in Romania with Roma community and how work other countries. And we are part of the network with European Roma Rights Center, and they have a lot of experience with other countries like Macedonia, Albania, Serbia, Romania, and others. So Slovakia, it's Croatia. So we can speak specific on that, and I can help a lot because we have a lot of systems, how to work with them, what the struggle is biggest, how we can do some work together. So that is my idea because it's too late now and I will finish. Thank you very much.
Thank you. But actually, this discussion on Roma rights and anti-racist housing tomorrow continues. So we can pick up this, this line of discussion and continue tomorrow. There will be also some of our colleagues from social housing now. And in the book, there is another text from the Roma feminist organization E-Romnja. And in that text, there are cases exactly about when people didn't have like IDs and documents. So it's very late now. If somebody has something very short to say it now, or if not, I will have to close this, but just 2 minutes before I close, there's something else as well. We made this translation of the newspaper. We have this newspaper called, in English, The Brick. It's dangerous. We have this small English translation. The special issue is in there in Romanian, and you can have the English now. It's on the table, so please take it. And thank you very much. The book in English is on Căși, sociale ACUM site, but it will be also on EAC's site, so it will be, all of this knowledge available.
Yeah, just a short